Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show tonight. What is today? It's the 22nd of January, 2020, show number 132. And man, it's a pretty good night here. We're having some good weather. Let's go around to the panel and see how things are elsewhere in the world. Mr. Casey Green joins us from the Mid-Atlantic region. How are things with you today, Casey?
You can have your weather back, sir.
Yeah, weather's really dependent on what you're used to. I would agree. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like 20 with a high, or with a low of, it was a low of 19 and a high of 20 something. Yeah. Fahrenheit.
Understood.
Centigrade.
Yeah, yeah. And we're sitting around, I guess it would be about -5 is our daytime high here. So -5 C.
Even worse.
And convert it, you double it and add 32. So that'd be -10 plus 32 would be 22, roughly. 22 Fahrenheit. Mr. Patrick Connor, I am sure you're above 22 Fahrenheit. How are you today, sir?
I'm excellent. And I am today, but maybe on MLK Day, I went up to Mount Hood and did some skiing up there. It might have been around 22 that day. Actually, it was really a great day for skiing. It was a little overcast, but there was no wind, and it was beautiful.
Ah, day of skiing. That's very good.
Yep.
Very good.
An article about how millennials are ruining skiing.
But electric vehicles aren't. It did a great job.
So at your the place of skiing you went, would they have some L2s available for EVs on Mount Hood?
Not where I went, but there is a Chatamo charger at Ski Bowl, and Sandy, Oregon has a Tesla supercharger that's on the way, so it's pretty easy.
Okay, very good, very good. Well, as per usual, there's no shortage of news this week in the world of Tesla. A ton of stuff happening all the time, and let's get right to it. There was a recent job posting from Tesla China, basically design studio, looking for a designer type job was posted. But that's not the most unusual thing about it. Is what happened as well, along with the write-up of what they were looking for, what type of person. They also displayed an image of, looks like a kind of a hot hatch, a possible 5-door, maybe a 3-door hatch, a smaller car, and we were wondering if maybe this is the start of the Model C or the Model Compact, as Elon had alluded to at one point in the past, as something that may be a possibility. So this was something that was kind of surprising that they put an image up there. Obviously, this was Tesla posting it. They would have control over what the ad was and what the image was. So kind of interesting. Did you guys happen to see the rendering?
Yeah,
I'm thinking
it might be, what do you call to throw us off the scent.
Yep.
Because he did say that it would be designed in China, and that, unless they already have done that, and he's picked this.
Right.
Yeah.
If they haven't hired the designers yet, this is probably not the design.
Yeah, I guess that would be kind of anticlimactic, wouldn't it be? If there are no designers yet, and it's like, okay, we'll hire the designer, and then we'll just get them to sign off on what we've already created.
There are a few things about this I think are spot on, though. So, as we know, every time you can go down another $5,000 or $6,000 in price, that opens up a lot bigger part of the market. So, going to a smaller vehicle absolutely makes sense. And that's going to be more aerodynamic and lighter, and that will allow you to use smaller battery pack, reduce the cost, still have a viable range. So all of those I think are spot on. But then you think back to the pickup. The first sneak peek from Tesla as official version was the giant pickup that had a pickup in the back of the pickup. And that's not at all what the Cybertruck turned out to be. So I think this drawing is to the next sedan as that truck was to Cybertruck.
Yeah, because the only time these sketches have been close has been after when we get these after we've already seen the concept car. It's like, hey, thanks for your deposit. Here, hold on to this.
Right. Yeah. Right. And it's good to see that that this possibility exists, because as Patrick had mentioned, coming down a little bit on the pricing, $5,000 increments, certainly would make a difference in being able to address another market that Tesla is just outside the reach of currently. We know that there's the thing called the Tesla stretch, where people kind of would do whatever they can to make ends meet to get to that level where they can get into the entry level. But you're right. If you could come down to, say, a $30,000 US price, you'd have others that would be able to jump in a lot more comfortable, and you'd have groups that are below that would do the stretch to get into that level as well. So I certainly hope that this becomes something, because I've got relatives that would jump at a car that would be in the $30,000 sub range. But I've got others that just cannot get up to the Model 3 level as it sits. So I certainly hope that this type of thing comes out at some point.
Me too.
I'm wondering if this is to gauge interest in whatever elements it is that they're testing there.
It could be too, yeah. Just to see what happens in the media, what happens in the public, what happens from shows like ours, what people talk about. But having that type of small compact car, I think would be a real plus. There's many people that could benefit from it, and bringing the price down and letting people get into that entry would make sales in the future as well. People love to move up the scale after they're used to something, or they're familiar with a brand. They tend to move up over time. So this
absolutely,
this is something that could play to their favor as well.
Yep. And having that designed in China makes perfect sense. There's a large market for affordable cars there. It's the biggest car market in the world, so that makes sense to kind of let them lead with that.
Right.
And then we see what happens when you get the Tesla for one person, a spousal pair, it gets stolen. So this gives them a chance to get an affordable Tesla to replace the first person's car.
Yeah. It makes sense, especially if you have a Model Y as your bigger vehicle for moving stuff around, and then you have this for just your commuter mobile. That's a great that would be a great combination, 5 years from now.
Yep. Exactly. Even if it has lower range. For example, in our family here, we've got a used EV. We've got a Chevy Spark that we use. My daughter uses it pretty well exclusively, but that's because her, obviously it's a cheaper car, and it allows her to do her daily commute back and forth to university. And there's no issues at all range-wise. All she needs to do is be able to get to university, get to her job, move around a little bit. The car comes with a DC fast charger, gets about 140 kilometers of range in good weather, and about 90 in bad weather. So it's something that if you get into a car that could do 250 kilometers, something in that range, then you're willing to spend that little bit more to get into a $30,000 car, and it just makes sense. So we hope it will happen. We hope things will move along, and we will definitely on this show cover it. See what happens as time moves along. Absolutely. Our next story is something about a bit of something that we've all called in the past about Model 3's capacity to start to eat up the rest of the sedans market that currently did previously belong to many ICE vehicles. BMW, Audi certainly were big in this type of market. And recently there was a publishing of an actual graph where they've monitored what's happened. And we'll just share it here on screen. And it really speaks for itself. This is what they call the hockey stick. because it looks like a hockey stick on the far right here, which of course the blue line is the Tesla Model 3. And then the other sedans, BMW, Audi, Lexus, Acura, Infiniti, Mercedes are all listed in basically a downtrend, even just before the release of the Model 3. Yeah. So you can see that there was a bit of a downtrend, and then the Model 3 was introduced 2017, and then that spike happens on the far right-hand side of the screen. But interesting. Looks like the biggest hit over time has been the BMW 3 Series. It's the one that's dropped from the most to basically the least at this point. So again, we knew this was going on. We've gotten reports many times about not only the U.S. market, which is what this graph depicts, but even in European markets, the same type of thing, maybe to a lesser degree, has been happening. But in the U.S. market, it's certainly been dominated by the Model 3 in a big way.
Yeah, all I can say is we told you so.
Yep. The legacy car makers are now saying that looking back is 2020 vision, because they're really suffering at this point with what the map looks like to them currently.
Yep, butts and seats sell cars.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, next we've got Patrick's got a story for us that he's going to tell us about from his blog, Cars with Cords.
Yep, carswithcords.net. Can you share the image from that?
Oh.
So
I will try.
Okay, yeah, I'll speak to it while you get this going. So we've talked about Tesla stock on here quite a few times, and on our sister show, What Drives Us, last week, Paul was talking about how it's as volatile as Bitcoin and don't invest your retirement in it. And we had some debate about whether or not you should be investing in Tesla. And so that got me thinking, well, okay, what exactly have I done with my Tesla investing? And of course, this is only looking at the past. If I could see the future, I wouldn't be on. Yeah, this would be a whole different kind of podcast if that were the case. So I decided to look at when did I buy and when did I sell, and how's that worked out for me. And so that's what this graph here at the bottom is. The blue lines are where I bought the stock, and the red arrows are where I've sold it. And you can see I bought a few times when it IPO'd, and then I sat on that for 6 years, didn't do anything with it. And then that first sell point is just in 2016, and that was our Prius got totaled, and we were car shopping, and I said, hey, this Tesla stock's done well, and so I'm gonna sell some and buy a car. And then I started looking at. We also had an old SUV at the time, and so I really wanted something that we could take up to the mountain. I was going to get rid of the SUV, something that if we wanted to go camping, we could fit all of our stuff in, and something that was fuel efficient. And at this point, we had the Leaf, so a plug-in hybrid was what I was thinking would be perfect for us. We'd have the EV for commuting and errands, and then the plug-in hybrid SUV. I wanted a Mitsubishi Outlander, and they were supposed to be coming to the U.S. any day now, and then they just didn't come. And finally I said, fine, I'm buying a Model X. And so in 2016 I bought a Model X. My wife was really supportive. She was like, that's the car you want. Why do you keep saying get the Outlander? I said, well, it's cheaper, and buy a vehicle that's going to make you happy. And I was like, really? That's a lot of money. I love my wife. And so I bought the Model X, and I liked Tesla before that. I bought the stock at the IPO. I had high hopes for them, and I was into EVs. I had the Leaf, and the Leaf was actually my second EV. I had the electric truck before that. But when I had the Tesla, I was like, okay, these are the only guys that have really cracked the code on making a vehicle that has the range, has the charging network. The technology was incredible. And sure, I'm not really comparing apples to apples because it was a lot more expensive, but that's what it took to make a compelling vehicle at that point in time. And the prices are going to come down over time. So that's after I bought the car in 2016, I realized how far ahead of the game they were. And so then whenever the stock had a dip, I was buying a little bit, just a few shares here, a few shares there. And I did that over 2018 and 2019. And then the whole 420 funding secured thing happened. And the stock actually first spiked up to 370 or 380, I think was its high. And I sold some then. And that was actually when we were buying our Model 3. So that money worked again. When I sell their stock, it was to buy their car, and then the stock dipped after that because the SEC got involved, and that was like, oh great, I sold at the high, and now it's down, and I'm buying it at half the price I was a while ago. And I'm sure if you were an investor who's holding the stock and it's just gone in half, you're horrified. But if you sold it at the high and you're buying it double the stock at half the price, that was awesome timing for me. And now recently it's up. I don't know what today's stock. Hey Google, what's Tesla's stock price?
As of 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today, Tesla is trading at $568.93 per share after hours on Nasdaq, down 0.11% from closing.
So there you go, 568. So yeah, I sold this at 519 or something. So yeah, I could have made a few more bucks a share, but I'm never gonna be upset about a win in this scenario. So maybe from here it'll stay or keep going up, or maybe it'll pull back and I'll buy some more. And either way, the stuff that I sold, I still have these original shares I bought at the IPO price, and I plan on holding those until I retire. So we'll see how it goes. But anyway, that was my stock journey with Tesla.
I have to say, by just looking at your little chart here with the arrows, that you look like a stock genius. You seem to follow the curves pretty good, buying low and selling high. But yeah, and again, we're not advocating that we know what's going on stock wise, but this was a particular example. But man, that looks pretty good. You bought it IPO price was back in 2011 or 2010?
Yeah, it was summer of 2010. Yeah, it IPO'd at 20, and then it went down to 18. I bought some. It went down to 17. I bought some more. It went down to 16. I bought some more, and then it's been up since then.
Yeah.
Yep.
I got in cool. at 36 and 38.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sold the 38 to pay for the 36, and so I'm in it for free until I sell.
That's right.
Yeah, that's another thing that I do, just so it's a volatile stock, right? So how do you sleep at night and not worry about it? Well, after you've got a stock that's doubled or tripled or even better, sell your initial stake plus 10%, and then take that money back out. Now, no matter what happens to the stock after that, you've made 10% on your money, which is not bad. And if it keeps going up, awesome. If it tanks tomorrow, you don't have to worry about it. You still made money. So it's the right way for me, emotionally, to play that game. And sure, you have to make sure you get it to double before you can do that. But if you get lucky, you do.
Yep, absolutely. Great advice. Take some of the money off the table when you're ahead of the game. Absolutely.
Yep.
Next story is a little bit about sales employees. When you remember I guess it was about a year ago, Tesla had this a lot of announcements going on, trying to get the Model 3 to a price range where they could sell it for $35,000. They had a mid-tier car that they got out just above that, about $5,000 more. So they were trying to beat it down to a sellable price of $35,000, which was the promise that Elon had made on stage. And with some of those things in mind, they decided they were going to shut some stores down. They were going to shut down actually the vast majority of stores, and only leave the ones that were profitable, or the ones that they found were high traffic areas. to remain open. And along with that, they were changing compensation for sales employees. So they currently, at that time, sales employees were given a salary plus a commission based on the number of sales that they performed. And that commission was taken away, and they were given a bump salary. And I guess what's happened recently is that there's been a petition that's gone out that a number of the sales employees have signed on to that are looking for higher salaries in place of what they have right now. And there's a mixed bag of people saying it's fair or not fair, but certainly based on what people were being paid pre to that time, there was I guess there was a level of compensation they were getting, and they believe that they haven't hit that since that point. So this, of course, is trying to I guess, correct that and get them back on an even keel based on what they had seen previously. Had you guys heard anything about this from any of your dealings with Tesla sales staff? Have you heard this previously?
The last time I spoke with them about this was when we went to Jacksonville the day of the announcement, and I kind of took them all by surprise. They're like, "Yeah, we don't know if we're going to have jobs, you know." And,
well, there certainly was a great deal of uncertainty when it was certainly announced. Well, like Elon took everyone by surprise. There were people that leased the stores that were like, we didn't know anything about this. That we're going to be these leases are going to be broken. We have no idea. So yeah, I can imagine these store employees were the last to know.
They were. I had expected that they would have had some kind of heads up or something, and it was still fresh. Even though I had managed to drive a couple hours from the announcement, it was still too fresh for people who were on shift. Yeah.
Yeah, I have two comments. First, when that happened back then, when we were talking about it, we said they're not going to close the stores. They're moving into a Model 3 and Model Y that is going to need, they're going to a broader market. They're going to need to talk to people face to face, because the internet savvy folks that are buying, the early adopters, they're moving out of that market. So there's no way that that's going to be a winning strategy. They have to have a storefront, and so they're going to change their mind, and they did. So that was the first comment, and then the second one is maybe I'm biased because I've never had a job where I get sales commission, but I think that is the wrong motivation. If the employee's only trying to close the deal, they're going to do unscrupulous things in some places to get that done. So I would much rather have someone who is a salaried person that I'm dealing with and have the conversation about, is this the right, let's get you in the right vehicle for you, even if it's not ours. Here's the things that it's good at, here's the things that it's not. If your use case is not a good one, fine. Maybe we'll have something for you in 5 years. You should go lease something else and then come back and check with us. But I think that's a much better strategy long-term for any company. Commission sales is not the way to do it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they're not saying they want a commission here, just to clarify. They're saying that they just want different compensation, a boost to salary is what was mentioned in this particular article.
Yeah, well, okay. We were just talking about Tesla stock. Tesla employees have an employee stock purchase program where they can put, I think, up to 10% of their salary into the stock and buy it at a 15% discount. And it's not just a 15% discount. It's during that participation window, you can either buy it at the opening price or the closing price, whichever's lower, and a 15% discount. So if if you're putting 10% of your pay into that and it's doubling, there's an extra 10% of pay that you get every 6 months. I don't know. If they don't like it, they can go work somewhere else. It's not like they're getting. It's not like they're getting a horrible wage. So I'm not.
Yeah.
I have no sympathy.
Yeah. Well, it's again, wages are, there's two sides of the coin. There always is. It'll be interesting to see that if this goes further, if this makes stories as time goes along, or if probably, it may be just settled in the background too. So we will see as time goes along, but obviously there are some that are disappointed in order to get to get a petition started in the first place. We don't know the number of people. We don't know the percentage. All that is questionable, but it is something that we'll keep our eye on as time goes along. Next story is a little bit off the beaten trail. Casey and I were talking just before we started the show. It was about the price that people pay for charging, not necessarily with Tesla, but with other groups. And it was announced this week that Ionity chargers in Europe had a posted rate previously that people were paying for charging, and they basically changed the rate. They went up by 500%, 5 times the value.
100%.
It was a crazy amount that none of the other markets, none of the groups that are in the market are charging this type of amount. But this has pushed them into a point where, as an example, the Porsche Taycan, which would use these chargers or could use these chargers at the highest rate, would have an equivalent of $70 to fill up its 200-mile tank at a European charger. And I will add that obviously in Europe, gasoline prices are higher and electricity could be a little bit higher. It's not a great deal higher as gasoline is, but if you compare it to gas, you can't compare it to an American or a Canadian value because their gas prices are basically double what ours are. So, but 500% in one shot, I think this is going to shoot themselves in the foot. Like I really think that this is something that you shouldn't do all in one fall swoop. If it's something you have to do, it should be maybe raised every couple of years. But maybe 500% in one shot is really going to be a tough pill for people to swallow. And as Casey and I had mentioned before the show started, you're going to have people that are just going to be going to the competition and avoiding this charging station wherever they can.
Yep.
Right.
Is this the same guy who was like showed the picture of the flooded parking lot that had the superchargers in it, and then the internet wasn't having it and showed the other guy's chargers covered in water? Or not?
Right.
I'm not sure, but so this is Ionity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ionity is a joint venture with Volkswagen, Ford, and several other car companies.
Yep.
So it's not like they are some startup and they were about to die and they had to do this because if they didn't, they had to shut the whole network down. As we talked about earlier when you showed that graph of the car company and their sales, these car companies have to start selling electric vehicles. And one of the reasons that Tesla is selling so well is there's a great network to support them. And if you don't have a great network to support it, then the car has limited usability only within your local radius. And people want to have the freedom, whether or not they use it, to be able to drive anywhere. If you're in Europe, you might want to go from the UK to France or to Germany, and or to Poland, and you want to be able to drive that whole continent if that's what you want to do. And that means you have to have a charging network, and it has to be reasonably priced. And they are shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, definitely. I think that this is gonna come back to them. They're gonna have to lower the price down, or they're gonna suffer the consequences of they're just not going to get used. And if they're trying to be a sustainable company that is able to cover their costs when your customers all go away and no one's buying it, you're not going to be any further ahead of the game. In fact, you'll just be falling behind as the days go by. So it'll be interesting to see if our European friends, what they do with this. There's already been a cry of outrage from the public because of the the mass amount that it's changed. But we will definitely see if there's going to be some fallout as time goes along, because gotta believe there's a lot of people that if they were using it, a large number of them are going to change their habits.
So this is the European Electrify America.
I was wondering about. I know VW is one of the companies that's involved, but I don't know if it's funded through Dieselgate settlement funds. So
that's what I was curious.
It's different if it's different, because technically what they did in Europe wasn't illegal. No. It was certainly bad faith, and you could say unethical, and you could call it horrible, but I don't think it was. So I don't think they had the settlement money like they had in the U.S. for Electrify America. Right. I think they're doing this because it fits their long-term roadmap for their vehicles, and making a coalition of automakers to all work together is a brilliant idea. Now, managing it like this, maybe not so much of a brilliant idea.
Yeah, so we will see as time goes along if what happens to this plan, but I can guarantee there's going to be some changes either way. We will see how long that takes. Yeah. Our next story is a bit of a space story, or almost a space story, I guess I could say, and Casey's got that for us.
It's very much space related. So SpaceX recently did their in-flight abort test of the Crew Dragon capsule. So what they did was they took a Block 5 booster and the full stack, and they sent up the rocket as it would go on a normal mission, and then right after max Q, maximum aerodynamic pressure, they simulated an engine failure, and then they aborted the capsule, and it went off picture perfect. And the capsule deployed correctly, the trunk deployed correctly, the parachutes deployed correctly, and then the booster didn't make it, as they warned us. It went boom. But they did recover the trunk, and the second stage actually made it until it hit the water before it also went kaboom. Because it was full of fuel, because even though it didn't have an engine, it would be a little too late to change everything over to, say, water or some other fluid to simulate what was going on.
And of course, they had to have it as real the simulation to as real as what would happen with a fully loaded Falcon delivering astronauts to the space station. They needed to perform the exact same way.
Exactly. Say the abort engines burned too hot or too quick or the wrong way, and they went kaboom. You would want to know that because the water would or other fluid wouldn't behave the same way. In addition to being a different density, and it spawned a lot of nice pictures. It didn't look like it was going to go off for a minute because the weather at the retrieval zone was you had some high seas, and they managed to find a half hour and slot it in there.
What I found amazing about the launch is keeping the high-powered telescope on it. If you had a chance to watch it, if you didn't, you can watch it through SpaceX.com. Yeah. But as they got to that max Q, the main engine shut off, and then all of a sudden the little capsule just jettisons off the top, gets clear of the first stage, and then you could see the first stage kind of wobble because, of course, the thrust was off at that point, and it's lost its nose cone. So it's still in Earth's atmosphere. It's being affected by the atmosphere at that point, so it's wavering.
It's running at Mach 2.2.
Yeah, and the explosion happens, which was kind of cool to see. And then what I really found cool was that the Dragon capsule, they had all this equipment on it for filming. So you were seeing the nose cone pop off. You were seeing the original chutes drop out, the trailing chutes that would eventually pull out the full large chutes, and it start to float down towards Earth. And again, it brought back memories of the Apollo mission that I had seen as a very young child. But I've seen obviously the repeat performances and the recordings. But again, watching the vehicle float down to Earth again brought back those memories, which was really cool to see.
Certainly, and now that they've done these tests, which were deemed a success, they're going to sit down and analyze all the data, And now the last step before they can be a regular space ferry is they're going to do a test with just 2 astronauts instead of the full complement of they're going to run 3 or 4. They can run up to 7, but they're not going to run that many for NASA. And before they can start the regular service, they're going to have to prove it with these 2 test pilots.
Yeah.
Cool. I need to watch this. Rockets exploding is exciting, but this time it's nice because it was on purpose.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and I'd much rather have them do this, learn lessons, and then when they're taking people up into space, not have them explode. So, well done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, another kind of a sidestep story for space is that Elon was talking about Mars again recently. And I don't know. These numbers are crazy, the ones that he reported. And I'll let you think about it yourself. But basically, the number that I heard that was just blew my mind was that he expects to put 1 million people on Mars by 2050. And just so everyone's still counting, that's 30 years, 1 million people on the surface of Mars in a city. And he's going to do that by building 1,000 starships. And that basically there is going to be an average of 3 launches a day to push those vehicles and, of course, cargo and people to the Red Planet. Again, I gotta believe that this is Elon has always talked ambition. Anytime that he's talked future looking has always been really large. When I remember when the Gigafactory was first announced, it wasn't announced very long before Elon was saying there's going to be several Gigafactories in each continent. So it's always one-upman on everything. And I think this is the same thing. I really don't believe that we're going to get 1 million people on Mars in 30 years. I think that, we'll probably get to Mars. I think there will be a settlement maybe starting. But, man, 1 million people. and then during the same interview, he said, and there'll be jobs, lots of jobs. Yeah, I guess with 1 million people on the planet, there would be a lot of jobs. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that point. But, having the ability to have food, water, building materials, habitat themselves, dealing with the problem of radiation that's going to exist on the planet Mars to begin with, man, there's a lot of hurdles to be overcome. And even 1,000 starships, huge goals. Don't think it's going to happen in that time frame. But I wouldn't bet against them over a period of time. It maybe not the original amount, but over time, some of this definitely could come true.
Well, I mean, we're almost at 1 gigafactory per continent.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's not impossible using the math that he's using, but I don't know if it'll be 1 million. He talked about basically indentured servitude to get there. You'd work your way off at the company store.
Yeah. You get a plane ticket to Mars, and then you pay it off by working on Mars.
Yes,
that's how a lot of people got to the New World.
That's true.
So,
that's true.
In this case, take that word "world" and make it more literal. Yeah, so most people, what's the saying? Most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in a decade. Yep. So we've got 3 decades here. So it's I don't think we know enough about how technology will evolve over the next 30 years to say whether this is crazy or very easy. There's too many black swans between here and there to know how things will twist and turn. And like you said, he sets big goals, and okay, so maybe we have 500,000 people, and he didn't meet his goal, but now we've got 500,000 people on Mars. That would be awesome.
Yeah, it certainly would. I just want people to kind of take again. There is a thing called Elon time. Some of it has been changed a little bit based on maybe what we'll see with the Model Y, which we'll be talking about in a few moments. But he's always set huge goals, and he's never backed away from them. He says that sometimes he has an issue with time, but he's never afraid to say what his ultimate goal is, and that's what I kind of like about him as well, is that he just goes for it. He says this is what could be accomplished. I believe this could be done, and he pushes that out as a big goal in front of everybody. And I think that's great in a number of ways. Just that you can't depend on something like that in those particular time frames all the time.
Yep, and he's not talking 3 a day like some sort of weird Mars highway. No, he's talking 3 a day, and then they all leave together in a flotilla.
Right.
See how that goes.
And of course, it's based on how close Earth is to Mars and the orbital thing. So it's a shorter period of time to actually get to Mars, as opposed to just going every 3 days. It certainly would line up with the orbits.
I think it would be. Yeah, really
I think it's every 18 months or so that they're in proximity.
Yeah.
I think it would be really cool though if they did do the 3 every day, because then the ones that left early might actually get there after the ones that left later.
That would not be good if you're on the slow train.
Welcome to Mars.
Welcome to Mars. Where you been? How come you've been taking? How come you drive around in circles through the Milky Way?
We took a detour to go check out the Roadster. We wanted to see Starman and wave at him.
Exactly. Well, let's move on to the next topic, which kind of rolls into Elon time in the opposite way. There's been a number of stories, of course, about the Model Y that have been going out. The first one I wanted to touch upon was someone managed to get some pictures published in a Japanese article, and I'll just share that with us right now. And we'll try to make that full screen. Is that showing up for you guys?
Yeah, I see it.
So they got a picture of the famous third row in the Model 3, and as you can see from the photo, there is not a whole heck of a lot of room to put your foot in, less your leg. Now, this, of course, could be that the middle row of seats has been pushed back to its furthest position back, and of course eats up as much space as it can on the track. Because obviously that does not look usable even for a child, for legs and feet. But again, we don't know if this is a production model, if this was pre-production, if this was beta. We have no idea what this particular model was that was photographed. This could have been the one that was brought to the initial Model Y rollout. And since that point, they've made changes to it. But this is what was photographed and sent into this Japanese news magazine that they published just last week. So interesting to see. It certainly is going to be a 2-seater in the back, but we'll have to see if this middle row is sliding or if there's something else going on in this particular configuration.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
It's certainly looking like they're trying to squeeze out the Model X at this point. When you look at the overall size of the vehicle, and no, not squeeze the Y out of the factory, squeeze the Model X out of production. So it's only the Model Y.
That's an assumption. That's
interesting idea. Yeah.
So the Fabergé, I mean, like the seat rails, and when you look at the exterior dimensions, it's within spitting distance. The interior is a lot smaller, but not so much that you couldn't say, "Hey, this is our SUV." And when he did the model, the maximum plaid, he only called out the Model S. He didn't call out the Model X, even though they have the same drivetrain.
It's certainly possible that they discontinue the S or the X at some point in the future, but I sure hope not.
I don't think they'll discontinue the X first. Oh, the S first. I think that if they do, the X will be the first to go. They'll trial that, see how it affects the funds, and then they'll talk about what they might do with the S.
Yeah, I don't think anything's in trouble for the next 2 years. I think Model Y's got to be introduced, and it's got to be. They've got to be able to figure out what the demand is, and if it is on par with what they believe it will be, then things may change.
Yeah, because he was saying it's going to be their best-selling vehicle.
That's what they've
Right.
said.
Yeah.
They said even combined, it's
Yeah.
going to be their best vehicle. So,
Right. If you just look at that market segment, it's 3 or 4 times the size of the sedan market. So if you just look at the 3 versus the Y, ignore the labels and the brands and that they're Tesla, that's what the market team seems to go for. So Model Y could be huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and it's based on that same story with the Model Y. Certainly, there's been a lot more talk about the Model Y. They've been sightings, of course, that we reported on last week. It's gone through our Twitter feed. If you haven't followed us through Twitter, you can do that by going to @TheTeslaLife, and you can see stories that happen throughout the week. But what we found interesting was that that particular supercharger in what was the San Lupa?
San Mateo?
San Luis?
Yeah, it's. Hold on, I've got the name here.
San Luis. I can't pronounce the third word.
San Luis Obispo. and what that particular supercharger is at the Madonna Inn, and that's on Highway 101 between San Francisco and Los Angeles. And that's the one, Patrick, I said you should visit at some point as you go on your travels. But
right, yes, the interesting men's room.
That's right. That's right. But in this particular story, a gentleman had seen a Model Y parked there the day before and was able to speak with a Tesla employee briefly that was charging. And then the very next day, he was at the same supercharger, and sure enough, the Model Y showed up again. And he was able to talk so much to the Tesla employee the second day that the employee let him sit in the car. He was able to sit in the back or the middle row, and he was able to sit in the front. And they just asked him not to take any photos of the interior of the car. So he gladly accepted that to have the chance to sit and see what the room was. He was extremely impressed with the room, the configuration of the seats, the layout of the the dash in front of him, or it's a Model 3 obviously look on the inside with the central dash. But he was impressed with the room he had and what was available to him. He made no comment on the third row, even if there was a third row. But it was interesting to see that he was able to get in a car and test it out. So that kind of leads us to the next story, which is a group of Canadians have been getting phone calls from Tesla Oakville, which is one of the showrooms here in Ontario. And they're alerting these Canadian Model Y reservation holders about being ready to receive their cars. So I don't know why Oakville is the only one that's reached out to this or has been reported on this. But there have been now 3 people, I believe, that claim that they've received these calls on a Reddit forum about getting ready to receive the cars. They have been told that the Model Y will be available within 2 weeks. The beginning of February, the performance model is going to start to roll to employees first. And then as the weeks move along, the performance will move to the all-wheel drive as well. So we've all speculated that we believe the Model Y is going to release sooner than later. Tesla themselves have said they moved up the schedule. They didn't say how far, but this is looking better and better. There's more and more information. There was the registration of the VIN codes that happened recently. There was the, certification of CARB, which had to happen previously as well. So again, more and more of these stories are happening, and as we like to say, when there's smoke, most likely there's fire. So we will see what happens here, but it's getting real interesting.
I suspect that somebody didn't read the whole email before they got excited and mentioned and called people.
Yes.
Or the.
Go ahead, Casey.
Or perhaps the delivery in process paperwork happened before they got the email saying, "Don't talk about it."
Well, yeah. if an employee at Tesla didn't understand some directive. Possibly it could have leaked out to a few people until a supervisor found out and said, "What the heck are you doing?"
Right.
Or it could be, I get it could be a fabrication. It definitely could be, but there's just does seem to be a lot of activity on this front, and when you're putting the pieces together, it kind of looks like, yeah, we could have a February launch here.
As Russell would say, allegedly.
Yeah, so I'm not going to say it's impossible, but Tesla employees have not been the best source of information. We saw that over and over during Model 3, that somebody in a Tesla store told somebody something that turned out to be completely wrong. And then if you go and talk to someone at another store, they're like, "Oh no, we get stuff off of his Twitter account just like everybody else." And so if you're someone who's watching podcasts like this, listening to stuff like this, you probably know more than the average Tesla employee about what's happening at the car company. Yeah. So I want to not take that as an incredible source that we should really put a lot of faith into. And Canada, I'm sorry, but you are not going to get the first Tesla anything. Not because we don't love you, but they're going to do deliveries around Fremont.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
And they're going to do deliveries to employees. So no, those guys are not getting their cars in 2 weeks. It's just not going to happen.
What I could see is if they do the employee delivery, and like the shipment notification happened first, and then the don't talk about it email happened second. If this is all true, they want to finish cold weather testing before you guys finish your winter.
And that's where we've seen some of this happening. Is there's been a report of Model Ys in Minnesota. There's been reports of them traveling in the mountainous areas of even California on the what is it, the Cajun Pass, the Calhoun Pass, where they're traveling in winter conditions that have been happening lately. But no, I certainly agree that Canada's not going to get them first. There's no question in my mind for that. But the report was the performance would be starting to deliver to employees in February. So after that, it could take a month. It could take longer. But again, it's just an indication of when does it start. And people are saying, well, these people are saying that they've heard basically the employee thing starts in February. So
yeah, just to give a plug to another show, Tesla Daily. Rob Maurer covered this topic in detail, going over each one of these things that we've mentioned. And in the past, what was the timeline between this event and that event for the S, the X, the 3, and how have those timelines evolved with each iteration? And so yeah, there's a shout out to Tesla Daily.
Very good, very good. Yeah, so again, we'll keep on top of this. We'll be watching and reporting throughout the week. You can follow us on Facebook at the Tesla Life #1. You can follow us on Twitter at the Tesla Life. And of course, if you're watching this podcast now and haven't already, please give us a thumbs up right now. And also, if you've never done it before, follow this just podcast, because that helps us, gets us in the eyes of others, new people, and gets us rated better. So thumbs up and subscribe would really help us, and we would definitely appreciate that. Thank you very much if you do so. Next, another podcast we're going to talk a little bit about is the new podcast called Third Row. This is a podcast that's just, I believe, 6 episodes new, and they recently landed a pretty good guest, or a number of guests. They had a part 1 that was released just the other day with Elon and Kimbal Musk.
And May was in the background.
And May was in the background tweeting, because that's how a lot of us heard about it, is that May had sent up some tweets about them all sitting around a round table. And didn't this happen to be at Elon's house, or one of his houses that overlooks the Bel Air Golf Club in Los Angeles?
Gene Wilder's old house.
Gene Wilder's old house, exactly. And sitting around a big table and discussing basically a lot of history, what Tesla was previously, how it began, how Elon and Kimbal and their family moved from South Africa to Canada to Los Angeles, and Kimbal and Elon's ability to start companies, where they worked, how they struggled, what they tried to accomplish, what they did accomplish. It's an over 2-hour podcast for part one, so I'm assuming there's going to be a part two, and very interesting. If you're interested in the subject, there's a lot of detail that I didn't know about that I heard now direct from either Kimbal or Elon, which was really interesting to hear. And certainly, if you've got time, maybe break it up into a few parcels of time. But it's interesting to hear and listen to the stories of Tesla and the beginnings. It's always I found that extremely interesting.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Yeah, a lot of it was stuff that I'd already heard from Ashley Vance's book and from other Musk interviews. But then there were some little tidbits in there about one of the founders was Ian Wright, and he just seemed to disappear, and it became Eberhard and Tarpening and JB and Musk. And so what happened to him? Well, he covered that. So yeah, I won't spoil it. You're gonna have to listen to their Third Row podcast if you want to hear.
And then they touched on May's new book, A Woman Makes a Plan, and well, maybe only one of the people who kept touching on it, but I'm in the middle of that book, and I'm in the middle of this podcast, and they're both worth a listen if you want to know a little bit about the history of the Musk group.
Exactly, and we will have a link in the show notes if you wanted to click on that, follow up with it, as well as the other stories we do. We put them in the notes so you can click on the source material as well. I will mention one funny thing that was an interesting story that Elon had said during the interview. Not a major one, but when he was in Los Angeles, Netscape had gone public. This was back a number of years ago. And he felt that he wanted to work for Netscape. He didn't know anybody there, and he didn't know who to contact there. So one of his tasks was to go to Netscape's lobby and spend the day trying to scope out someone to speak to. And it's damn lucky he didn't get a job at Netscape because, of course, it forced him to go on his own and perform different things. But it's interesting about, as a young job seeker, what you'll do, what you feel is right to do, what your plan is. And sometimes things don't work out initially as to what you thought they would, but in the end, they worked out pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, there were a couple funny things
story.
Like that.
Yeah, exactly. Our final story of the night is actually a kind of miraculous thing that happened, and Casey's got that for us.
Yes, so there was a young YouTuber who owns himself a Nissan GTR, and allegedly he was traveling at extra legal speeds, extremely extra legal speeds, because at some point they allegedly had a collision with a Model X.
I don't think it was alleged.
It's still alleged, but
there's evidence of the collision.
There's evidence. So I assume Mark's going to show us the pictures.
Yeah, here they go.
Yeah, so he hit this Model X so hard that everything behind the battery split off and went its own separate way. And so he actually had several separate collisions. The Model X front half collided with a Mustang, and the Model X rear half collided with a Volkswagen. I'm assuming that's a Golf TDI, or not the TDI, but the Golf. And then I think there was one other vehicle that was involved in this collision that was not the Perp, and it was incredible. The Model X driver got out, and he was bruised and battered, but he was able to walk away, and because the Model X absorbed so much energy from the colliding vehicle, the alleged perp was able to also walk away, and you can see him in a couple frames of the video. And it was quite interesting. I showed my wife the aerial shot of this when we first saw it, and then these pictures came out afterwards, and it was incredible.
Nothing like splitting a car in half. like blowing through it and spinning it in different directions. And of course, the trail of debris was incredible. This was in Hollywood, Florida, I believe, from near Fort Lauderdale.
He had been traveling at an incredible rate of speed because not only did he do all of this damage, he managed to kind of like ollie up the median for another block. He tore up all the shrubbery and all of the the curbing until almost to the next intersection.
In this photo here, you can see the white car by this gentleman's head down the boulevard. That's the offending car that T-boned the Model X at a red light, allegedly. And it was interesting to see that I don't have a shot of it, but behind this car, there's a debris field falling right up to the white car in the median. So, wow, this particular Tesla Model X was a service vehicle. It's run by Tesla Transportation, is what the company's called, and they of course are an Uber type service of some sort. And it was fortunate there was nobody else in the car. It was just the driver, because if you were in the back seat, I'm not sure how that would have fared for you. The car split in half, obviously. But it probably would not have been as good. Glad there was nobody else that was in the vehicle at the time.
The expert types were saying that it would have been survivable, but it would not have been comfortable. I guarantee you that. And so then the internet sleuthy types, they found the guy's license plate, something about beating AMG Mercedes, and then they found his YouTube from that and discovered that he doesn't typically drive on a closed course by professional drivers. So this might be open and shut for the driver and the owner of the vehicle.
Yeah.
Versus the guy who changed their lives.
Absolutely. Well, glad everyone walked away. But again, interesting to see that the Tesla driver even being T-boned as he was starting to proceed through a green light, walked away from this. Basically, went to the hospital for evaluation, but just some minor cuts and bruises was the result of this horrific crash. But good to see that they're safe.
And if you zoom in on that frame right there, you can see that's actually the rear of the battery where it actually plugs in to the rear motor. And it's all intact. It's literally everything behind the motor, the battery, including the rear motor and rear axle, got ripped off. But both Falcon doors are still on the front, and it shows how strong this 7,000-pound vehicle is. It's like 6 and change, and but so you hit a vehicle that's got a gross weight of 6+, and then you hit 2 other vehicles that are at least 2,000 each, and that's
right.
And it still kept going for another block. That's
remarkable. Like you're almost thinking it was a missile to go that far. Like it was just incredible to go that distance. But again, everyone survived, and some survived very well. So
that's the most amazing part of this story. Is that these cars at very high speed, at least one of them, collide so hard that the back axle and the trunk, the rear of the vehicle get ripped off, and yet neither driver had serious injury. That's incredible.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, great show tonight. Patrick, any shout outs for the end of the show for us?
Yes, I've got one thing here. I'm not sure if you guys can see this or not. So back when I had the Nissan Leaf, I used to use this app called Leaf Spy, and you would plug a little ODB2 Bluetooth dongle in, and then you could read all kinds of stats off the car. Each cell in there, the temperature, all kinds of cool stats on how many cycles the batteries had, the amount of degradation that it suffered, all kinds of cool stuff. And then when I got my X, my timing turned out to be pretty good because the same developer, Turbo3 is his handle, ported that app over to the Model S and X. And I could use the same dongle. But now with the Model 3, it doesn't have the standard ODB2 port. So there's this adapter, and now I'll be able to collect some really cool model off of the. I'll be able to collect some really cool data off of the Model 3, if I can English. And this is from. Let me see. I'm going to get the name of the company right here. Here, I'll show you. It's eMobility. And I believe they're a German company. Let's see if there's a web page here. eMobility Driving Solutions GmbH. And I can't read there. .de. Anyway, so yeah, I'll get this installed this weekend, and I'll tell you guys about how it went next time around.
Excellent. We'll be able to see how it works next week. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Casey, any parting words from you tonight?
Just go visit my channel, youtube.com/CaseyGreen, KACEYGREEN. So far, our most recent video is about a young man who needs a new heart. And watch his video. And if you have it, maybe drop him a couple dollars. If you don't, just enjoy the video.
Very good.
Yeah, I think everybody out there should consider signing up as an organ donor. A friend of mine just got lung transplants, and it really changed his life. So, yeah, it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, you're not using them anymore, so
right.
Not at that point.
You may as well.
You're using them now, and when you don't need them, let someone else. Reduce, reuse, recycle, buddy.
That's right. Just like recycling. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. If you haven't already, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't, and check us out at The Tesla Life on Twitter and The Tesla Life #1 on Facebook. And we will see you again next week and find out what's going on in the Tesla life.
Thank you, Lee Moon.
Mr. Moon with the show music. Have a good week, everybody.